Hi everyone, and welcome to the first video for the series of our building texture project. This is going to go over everything from looking at references of different types of buildings and trying to figure out what we could do using images that we could base our textures off of and grab samples of images to put into Photoshop over our UVs to start off a texture. So we're going to see right here is our layout. Now right now this is going to look different than yours. I'm actually going to be unwrapping this one, and yours probably looks, or it should look, like this one. It's missing building A. That's on purpose. I'm going to show you one that you're not going to do. So you're going to apply these concepts to a different building. By thinking about that, let's kind of take a little rundown here with the different buildings. This is a little shack. I'll be demoing that. We have some sort of a farm type shape. We have a high-rise building with an awning on the front. And this looks sort of like a factory or some sort of a warehouse of some sort. And maybe this would be like a bank or some sort of a fancy building. So each one of these is extremely small. It's very low poly. As a matter of fact, if I go into my windows, if I go to display, heads up display, and I go into my polygon count, so poly count, you'll notice I only have 66 triangles, 72, 44, 48. These are ultra low poly. As a bit of information for why these are important to work with such low poly pieces, imagine having background objects for your animation or for a video game. You're not going to use a ton of polygons for those, so you can represent the idea of a building on a hill without having to have tons and tons of details. So that's one reason why you might want to use that. Another reason is if you're working in mobile, then maybe you would be doing, like in my experience, my paper plane 3 had very low poly level for our requirements. We had to have a very limited amount of polygons that could be on screen and a limited amount of texture data that could be on there. So by using low poly assets with textures that might be something like this right here, I could be able to put in a bunch of different models on screen and not have that get bogged down, especially since that was a mobile game that had to play on a lot of different 3D enabled phones back in the early 2010s. So there's lots of different reasons why we would apply this concept here. So what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to say goodbye to all of these. I don't need them. I just need this one right here. I'm going to move that to the center of my screen so it's easier to move around. Remember, that's just hold down the X key and drag. So left click drag. Now that I have this thing, I'm going to give it a little look over, and I'm taking notes in my head about what it is I'm looking at. I see that I actually see an N-gon here, which hurts my soul. This should have a little bit of a cut across here, but that's okay for what we're doing today. I see that this has a chimney on one side and 4 sides with a little bit of an eave underneath the roof. So not a whole lot of data here. So what I'm going to try and do is figure out how I can actually tell a story of this house. And by a story, I don't mean that you're saying, this person did this, and then they went to this place, and then they achieved that goal, or they lost something. I mean, the idea of this house tells a story visually to the viewer about what it is, who might live there. And so to do that, there's this really cool tool that's out. You probably are aware of this. It's called Google. Google has images that you can look at, and I know we've been using these. I'm being a little snarky there, but this is the best way that we can start to come up with some cool ideas. I typed in Little Shack because I'm sure there's a rapper out there probably called Lil Shack, but I'm talking about Little Shack, and this right here is going to help me to come up with some ideas for how this texture can start. And again, I'm not trying to make things up inside of my brain. I'm trying to use real world ideas to apply that to a fake thing, and that's how you're always going to get better artwork. So what I'm going to do is look at Little Shacks here and try to figure out the best references that I could use to build up this little 3D model. And again, looking at commonalities, okay, I see there's a chimney in the back. There's probably not going to be a ton of windows on that model, so this makes sense there. This makes a lot of sense here. How do I keep all these? Right click, copy. So just right click, copy image. And in Photoshop, I'm just going to hit Control V, Control T, scale it down so it's not gigantic. Oops. Trying that back up. I'm not sure why my computer isn't being happy right now. There we go. All right. So I have a desktop, or a desktop. Oh boy. Hold on a second there. I have a image that I already started with. This image is, if I go to new, I went to web, and I just told myself to give it 1920 by 1080. That's going to fit up basically the entire screen space of a standard HD monitor. And I'm just going to copy and paste a bunch of different images I found on the webs to be able to help myself out for designing this. Now I'm talking about story again. This doesn't look pristine. It doesn't look like it would be this candy building. I'm trying to make like candy as in like Mario. Everything is just like super pristine and clean. I want this to feel like it's in the real world. And so there's some areas that we're going to talk about while we're texturing this that can add that concept to our objects. Even if you have a brand new house, you're going to notice that there's some areas where moisture and moss grow. You're going to notice some places get scratched, or there's going to have some difference in the texture for the brick layout, all those things. So we're going to try and use as much of our references to try and push ourselves forward with this. So I'm going to paste that one right there. Again, scale that down, Control T, and move that over here as well. Hit enter, minimize that again. And okay, there's exactly that idea. So right here, rain doesn't hit the shack up here in most cases. The moisture, the wood is going to wick the moisture from the ground, and it's going to travel upwards. That's why you're seeing a darker tone of this wood down here and not up there. That looks real. It's because it is. And so just paying attention to what the world is telling us is how we can get really, really nice pieces created. So I'm going to copy that one again. And at this point right now, while I'm gathering reference, I don't really care about the fact that I'm kind of sporadic about this. I'm gathering a lot of different things. That's fine. This is a way for us to kind of put together all sorts of information, and then we can make a choice later on of what way we want to create this. That's fun. That's nice. I'm going to copy that image and paste that. And so I'm not going to waste your time of me going through and grabbing a bunch of pictures. This is going to be something that I want to see from you when you're gathering images. What you're going to start to see is you're going to have some commonalities, maybe by windows or by doors or something like that. These references are to give us a start on a concept. In no way, shape, or form do I want you using these references to directly just paste that onto the side of a building. That's not what I'm telling you to do. What I'm telling you to do this for is to be able to come up with some concepts that we can use to give ourselves some marching orders for what we need to do to actually start the UV Unwrap process, or not the UV Unwrap, but the texturing process. So let's actually go on to that next process. That's the UV Unwrap process, and that is important because right now, if I look at my UVs, oof, let's look what this did. That's not right. If you find this to be correct, you are incorrect. Notice my text on here is going all over the place. As a matter of fact, if I turn this button on right here, this is going to tell me where I have distortions, I have stretching, and there's definitely some major issues here. We shouldn't see these colors showing up. So what do I got to do? Well, I need to figure out how to break this thing down. First thing I can do, if I close this so we can just see it. All right. I know these, that's an easy thing I can grab. Just one side and another side right here. That's an easy thing to be able to work with. I also know that these are pretty simple spots to work with. Same thing with up here. So how can I work with this to actually make my model be easy to texture? Well, again, I'm gonna go back to the UV editor. And if this pops up for you, that's a common thing. Your UV toolkit can float away from that. That's fine, and some people freak out because they want it to be connected. Just left click on your menu bar and left click and let go over here, and it'll snap that all in there. Now I can expand this thing out. I can see what I'm texturing. Now, for some of you, you've been having that issue where you're working with the UVs and you're laying out within the UV2 or beyond that. You'll notice as I scale out, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. You should only have your models ever show up within this one right here. So that's the 0 to 1 on both the U and the V. So that is important to know. Now, so vertical, so UV2, UV1, and horizontal. So U's would be going left to right, and V's would be going up and down. Not that that's really the most important thing to know. So let's start breaking some stuff down and figure out how we can actually get this thing to unwrap. Now, in your professional world, you'll have multiple monitors. We have them at the lab. You may not have those at home. I do, but I'm going to keep everything on just one screen so you guys can see what I'm doing. I highly recommend as you get further down the road from this, and if you definitely want to go and pursue a career within this, then you should be purchasing double monitors at some point. It's going to be really helpful for you. The price of monitors is so cheap nowadays. Very, very helpful. So I have one face over here, or one side of this model selected. I'm just going to go to UVs, and I'm going to do an automatic for this one. And remember, what an automatic does is it allows for this side right here. It's going to basically just project across, and that automatic, it projected and it made my UVs. There's no distortion on this part at all. It is in the wrong direction, but I can fix that because as we see right here, it's actually sideways. I can fix that, and as a matter of fact, it really doesn't matter when we're UV unwrapping or from when we're texturing. It's just that our UVs have it sideways. So if that bothers you, obviously we can straighten that out. First thing I'm going to do before I even move anywhere else to unwrap, I'm going to take what I have here. I tap the W key, and that's our move. I'm going to move that out of the way. Uh-oh. It doesn't want to let go of all this other stuff. That's okay. Go to cut sew, and I'm going to use a cut. And let's just select these again. 1, 2, 3, 4. And now I moved those over here. So that's an easy way. And now I'm going to just merge this set. So I had all of these still selected, but you'll notice that if I move this around, it's actually separate pieces. So let me back this up again and do that one more time. So I have all these. I wanted to move those. They were still connected. So if I go to cut, and I can also try split. Let me go to faces now. I'll select those, move those over. Okay, so it split it away from that other piece. Let's see, did it take that? No, these are still disconnected. So if you ever have, if we move in a little bit closer to this, you'll see a thick line around all of these. That means that they're all separate. We want that to be one complete shell. So if I take these and just go to merge, now if I were to grab one of these faces, it's all connected, which is extremely helpful because now I could go to right click UV shell, and I can just move that one piece around. So anytime I can either go to face, right click UV shell, and now I have that whole piece. So I know this is not in the UV 0 to 1, it's over here to U2 V1. That's okay. I'm just moving this out of the way because I want to get all of the stuff unwrapped before I lay that out. I'm gonna go over on that side now, and I'm going to grab 1, 2, 3, 4, all of those. And again, that is an n-gon. That's actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sides. That's wrong, but for the sake of just getting this done, we're going to ignore that. I'm going to go again to my UVs, automatic, and okay. This gave me 1, 2, 3, 4, that again. And that's nice, but is it connected to anything? No, this time it's not. So we actually can just move this over. And now I'm going to go into my tools and start organizing some stuff before I work on any more unwrapping. I'm going to go into my transform, and I'm going to go to my rotate, and I'm just going to rotate once. I'm going to grab these, do the same thing. All right, they're different scales. So let's just decide that it's going to be, we're going to make this one smaller than that one. I'm going to make sure it is. I'm going to turn off this overlay so I can actually see a little bit better. And I'm going to turn off my the checkers here so I can actually just see that these are of the same scale. That's a lot better. Okay, now let's move them left and right next to each other. Okay, now I've got a roof. And I need to make decisions. How do I unwrap this roof? Should this roof be unwrapped so they're both next to each other? Should I only use one side? How do I need to unwrap this for my textures? Well, one thing to be aware of when we're unwrapping, when we are scaling things down, so if I scale this down like this, and if we look at the UVs here, okay, you'll notice this side right here, lots of checkers. This one has a really big checkers. What that's telling you is if you imagine these checkers being pixels, then that's going to be blown out, very pixelated, whereas this has more definition in our texture. So we have to make decisions about how we are going to UV unwrap things. Sometimes it's a good idea if you don't have any plans, so maybe one side of these, maybe you wanted to have a skylight on one side, you didn't want it on the other side, maybe you didn't want that. It really all depends on how you're texturing, but it matters because I can actually take the roof and have one side mirror onto the other side. And that way I don't have to texture both of those. That allows for me to have more texture space for other things. I'm not going to make that decision yet. I'm just going to UV unwrap that. So to do that, I'm actually going to go to my top view. And again, I'm going to go to UV automatic. And now, if I move this over here, and I turn these off, I now have a roof. Let's look at see if there's any distortion on this. A little bit. The reason why I'm seeing these are more rectangle than square, if you think about it, when it projected down, this actually, it's at an angle. So this top area up here is closer to the camera. So we actually have a little bit of distortion on this UV unwrap. So to be able to fix that, that's easy. I can right click, go to UVs, grab that, and grab that. And I'm going to turn on my checkers again to see. And what my goal is when I scale this, I want that to turn into a square. So let's see, if I scale this way, much better. That actually made that longer. And that's because we were having sort of a sense of foreshortening going on because this is at an angle. It's not directly on. Now we've eliminated that, and now we actually have the proper resolution represented on this model. So that's good. Oops. I'm going to go to shell again, and now I have a roof, which is gigantic compared to these pieces. So I will scale that down. And I have my sides of the house, or the front, depending on how you're going to texture this. This is up to you. And again, you don't have this model, you have different ones to choose from. And now I have other things to deal with. So I have this awning and front and back. So let's see. I'm gonna deal with my front and back. So I have front. And is there distortion on this? Yes, they're actually scaling more. They're stretching on the horizontal. So is this a separate piece? No. If we look at this, and this is something I want you to be very aware of, a very noob type thing to do as a student is to ignore these overhangs. And a lot of students will take something like this and just go, oh yeah, let me just get this done because whatever. I'm going to go into UVs automatic. Okay. And then I'm done. Well, sometimes what can happen if it doesn't catch, now this is Maya 2020 right here, sometimes it's not able to detect that there is a face there. So instead of seeing this this underhang right here, you will actually get something like this, where it can see the top, it can see the side, but it didn't know that this one existed. So you're actually missing all of these polygons that are there. So be aware of that. UV automatic unwrapping is only helpful sometimes. That actually did a good job to get these different pieces there, so I'm actually happy with that, with what that did. So I'm going to leave that alone. But I'm also going to make sure that I do the same thing for over here. So if I go select this, this, and that, and I'm going to do a UV automatic again. Okay. So now let me just look at what I got. Okay, I have the mirror version of that. So now, again, I'm going to rotate. So I have this, and I'm going to grab these. I'm going to rotate that the opposite direction. So I now have front and back. So front, or whatever this is for us, this is one of these, and then we have the other one. This right here is going to be our chimney, which I'm going to move out of the way for now. That's our smallest thing we need to unwrap. So we have all the sides of our house essentially unwrapped. They're just not at the proper scale, and they're not within our 0 to 1 UV set. So we need to figure out how to clean these up and actually make them work for us. Now, the front and back should be different, and the sides should be different. Some of the times people will try to take these things and just line them up so we have them have no issue with the edges. So if I right click on my UV and go to edge mode and I click somewhere, I can see when I click on this one, it clicks on that. That's telling me that in the 3D space, these share an edge. So if I were to actually take these and scale them down and then move this over, I have that. And then I would be able to grab this next one and bring that over. And then I can move the other one and bring that over too. Now, issue with this, if I wanted to use this methodology and lay this out for UVs, what's ended up happening is that I have all of these fitting. I can sew these together so these edges are the same, but all of a sudden I've got, like, look at my texture space. I've got all this wasted edge, and it's really not efficient. I know for a fact that my chimney, when I unwrap that, it's only going to take like this much space really compared to everything else. So I need to figure out a more efficient way to lay out my UVs in which I'm actually able to get this whole 0 to 1 UV sheet working for me. So the way that I like to work with this is to think about it where if I have this being one of my sides, I'm actually going to take this one, move it out of the way. I'm going to scale this one up. And this takes practice. Why I love this, I love UV unwrapping because it's kind of like this crazy puzzle. Every time you get a new thing to UV unwrap, it's going to be completely different in the sense that it's a different model that you get to work with. So that's really cool. But that also is a challenge to make sure that you're representing the model as best as you can in UVs. And that is something that some people find extremely stressful. So it takes some time. It's something you can't be doing while you're watching somebody play a video game, or you're watching some crappy YouTube channel the whole time that you're UV unwrapping. You need to turn everything off and focus. And so that's another thing, as online classes are going on, do not get in the habit of turning on your favorite show and watching that. You're going to crash and burn. I guarantee it. You cannot survive as an artist doing this. I know this from experience. Trying to stream a show while you're doing work, you're going to make crappy work. It's going to not be worth your time to pursue this career if you're not going to give it your all. You need to be able to sit and do this stuff. Think about, again, professional sports. As an athlete, you can't stream Doctor Who while you're trying to practice basketball. It's just not possible. So why would you think that trying to get to be a really good 3D artist and sit there and watch your favorite TV show at the same time is going to happen? It just doesn't. So make sure you're being true to yourself and you're being fair to yourself by actually giving yourself the commitment of what this requires, and that's sitting and not actually watching a TV show while you're working. Okay, back to this thing. So I know if I were to lay these things out and use up as much of the space going across one direction, all of a sudden I know that my roof is gone, and my chimney, which I haven't UV unwrapped, it doesn't even exist yet. So that's going to be a problem. I need to make some decisions on what can get priorities for scale. So I'm going to actually scale this down a little bit more. And actually, let's take both. No, let's do it this way. We'll scale this one down. And I'm going to do the same thing with this one. Okay. All right. So I have these. I'm going to start messing around with trying to get them to fit a little bit better in my UV space. And now that I'm doing all this, I know that my roof, I probably don't need to have. It's a roof, right? It's not really all that fancy. I don't need to have both sides represented on this. I could probably get away with just having half of my roof be as the texture. So how can I do that? Well, right now I have the UVs where that's this side and that's this side. I can cheat by taking this UV right here. I'm going to use my move tool, hold down the V key, and snap that over to here. What this is doing, it's just like in paper, we're folding that in half, and now anything that this side has textured on it will show up on the other side. This is great to save resources for our UVs. Now I can actually scale this up a little bit more, and I'm taking advantage of my UV space a little bit better. Okay, now to make all this other stuff fit, let's see if I can take this, which now I'm going to start to decide what's the front of my model. I think this is going to be the front of my model right here. So that's my front. That's going to be the one that's the most, let's say that the camera's going to be looking at and all that. So I want to make sure that that has the UVs established as a priority. And then from here, let's say here's my roof. I'll start trying to figure out where I'm going to move that. And let's get our chimney in here as well. So now I have almost everything unwrapped. Let's say with this UV automatic on this one, what did that do? Okay, it unwrapped it, but that's kind of weird. Let's see. So I've got this polygon right here. If I right click, go to edge, okay, its neighbor is right next to that. That's good. As a matter of fact, if they're right next to each other, let's just select that edge and go to so. And now this is connected. This is one shell. All right, let's move that over. Let's see, is that, oh, wait a minute. That's not this one. So you'll notice automatic unwrapping doesn't always work in our favor. So we want to make sure that we can kind of fix these things by hand. And right now what I'm doing with these UV shells is just trying to make sure that they line up as best as possible. So, okay, so what I'm seeing here is actually this one right here goes over here, because you can see where when I selected the edge, that's those edges. And we're going to go to sew. And now we sew those together. And now this one, that's really odd. This one flipped. So when the automatic unwrap happened, it actually flipped around that polygon. All I have to do with that is I'm going to go down to under Tools, or sorry, Transform, and I'm going to rotate that around. So just 2 taps of that button rotated it around 180 degrees, because each time it was 90. And now I'm going to move this, and I'm going to just press the sew, and it brings it over. Notice how when sew occurs, it sews it without moving the shell. So to fix that, I'm going to click on this and move it closer. Okay, now grabbing that, merge. All right, last but not least, I have this one little piece. I'm going to move that over, right click, edge, so. And when it did that, you'll notice it skewed some of this stuff because I wasn't 100% lined up. You'll notice that that's happening. That's an easy fix for me to deal with. I can either make sure that I'm a little bit more aligned, so I'm going to move that over more and down and right click, edge, and sew. Okay, that's a lot better. Okay, so this chimney, let's look at our UVs with the checkers on. Wow, lots of pixel data, not a lot over here. That's because this is ginormous, so we need to scale this thing down. Right-click UV shell, scale that down, and then we will get this thing fitting somewhere in our UV sheet. And while I'm doing this, I'm also going to make sure I turn this on and off, this shell, to try and match the scale for myself. And that's about similar size for the checkers for both of those. All right, now I have decisions to make for the finalization for my UV layout. With this layout, I need to get the rest of this in here. Because if I really look at this, let me just turn on this. Oh wait, when I turn that on, everything's white. Remember earlier it was pinkish or bluish? Well, when that happens, it means that there's stretching or pulling going on. And that's why things start to glitch out and look strange. So when it's properly UV unwrapped and there's no distortion on that UV shell, it's white. And that's telling us you did a good job. So we sort of did a good job. But what I'm trying to do as well is eliminate as much of this negative space back here as possible. So the first thing I do, since I'm saying as I survey this, you know what, Josh, you did a good job on making sure these are all the same scale. You don't have to talk to yourself. Sometimes it helps, especially now that we're in alone time. We're not in our awesome lab. But what we can do now is say, okay, I like the fact that all of these are at the same size. So let's try to get rid of some of this negative space by grabbing all of this. So I'm going to right click, go to UV shell, grab this and scale that up. Now I know everything kind of went weird. That's fine. What I'm going to do is grab this piece, move that over, and I'm going to grab this piece, move this over. And let's actually move our roof out of the way. I'm going to move this out of the way and whoops, UV shell, move this down. And then I'm going to try to grab this one and move this up. Okay. Now I can move pieces over that I know are the same size and that are on the same edge. Like this is the same edge. We talked about that earlier. This is the one of the front or back sides, and this is one of the sides. These two are connected, so I could go to face mode and move this over and move that. Well, let's actually just go to UVs. I'm going to go to UVs. I'm going to right click, go to UV, grab this, and then holding down the V key, snap It doesn't want to do it yet. Let's try to just move this out of the way. I'm going to grab these and move these down too. And now UV shell, move this over. Okay, that's getting better. So only thing I need to do, I'm going to go to edge mode. Nope, I'm going to go to UVs. I'm going to make sure I have these selected again and just move that up a little bit. And then now this edge that these two share, I can go to merge. And now those are merged. I know that there is this overhang right here that I need to be aware of when I'm unwrapping, but that's pretty good. I also know that right here there's the underside of the model, and then there's the awning, or that little bit of a spot where that roof hits right there. So we have this piece. Oh, let's go to that side so we can see it. This piece and that piece. So, and notice also the UV Unwrap flipped it. So this is the bottom and that's the top. So we'll make sure that we fix this. I'm going to move these out of the way as well for myself. All right, now I'm going to do the same thing with these. So if I go and I'm going to go to UVs, bring these down. So I'm going to hold down Shift and click on these and move those down a little bit. And then now I'm going to go to shell and move this over. And then I'm going to go to edge, or no, vertices, grab those two and pull those up. And now I'm just going to right click, go to edge, click on that, and I'm going to merge that. So now I have, this is a shell and that is a shell. This one, I'm going to, since I made the decision I want this to be the front of my house, I'm going to move this one down. And I'm going to take this one, move it up, and I'm actually going to do something that may seem a little bit weird, but it's no big deal. For UV space, like as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to rotate that. And why did I do that? Well, now, because I did this, I now have two puzzle pieces that make sense. I have this one and I have that one. And now when I bring them closer, oh, they actually fit in that space more. So these are things to think about when you're UV unwrapping, is how can I get away with moving things around so my UV space is as nice as possible for the layouts. And so right now I think I have to, I'm gonna have to scale all of this a little bit down more to be able to get my roof to fit in. So I'm just going to grab across here and scale a little bit more. I don't need to do a lot, because if I move this over now, I'm going to grab this shell and bring it over to here. I'm going to drag this one in, and you'll notice, cool, I've got the ability to keep this piece now fitting inside of that. That's my roof. So that's great. I have all that in there. And what I want to do is make sure I'm not in jeopardy of having the pieces too close together, because that's where we end up getting that bleeding from pixels. So we want to give ourselves a little bit of a buffer for this. And I'm going to grab this, and let's say that that's my chimney. We'll put that right here. And these are the edges to the overhang. I'm gonna just I'm gonna duplicate those by laying those on top of each other. So I know that that's one overhang over here, and that's my other overhang over here. I want to make sure that they're in the proper orientation that I think they are. So what I'm gonna do is make sure I grab an edge. That's the inside edge there. So that's down, and what's this one? So if I click on this one, that's the inside edge too. Okay, good. So what I'm gonna do is grab this, move this up, and move this over. I can be messy about this because I'll clean this up in a second. And then now I'm gonna check this one. That's the outside corner. What's this one? That's the outside. Okay, good. So now I can just grab, I can go to shell and do the same thing. I'll move this and this, and let me maximize this so you guys can see. This is almost laid out on top of each other, but there's a way that we can fix this just to make sure that they are. Just grab your, go to UV, drag across, scale, and scale it one direction. Do that over here. We'll do that up, and we'll do that up. So all I'm doing is basically squishing these UVs so they're overlapping. You can't do this, like you couldn't do that with all these, right? You're gonna mess everything up. But if you're going along one scale axis, then you can do that, and that's pretty nice. So now to make sense and give myself the ability to actually work with this, that's the corner that these would be intersecting at, or these would be connecting to. So what I'm gonna do is grab these UV shells, move these up, and move these over, and do the same thing. I'm gonna go to UVs, scale here, scale there, and right there. Okay, good. So now I'm going to grab these shells, and I'm gonna move those so that way they're, let me do that with this tool. So I'm gonna rotate it once this way, and I'm gonna put them, let's just put them right here. This, I still have some space. Sometimes you're gonna have that just because you can't get everything else to fit a little bit more, but I'm pretty happy with where this is. If I wanted to, I could keep playing around with this a little bit more, but again, if your UVs are looking like this, then you're definitely getting where I want you to be. So now that I have all that, that's where we can save this. So we can do a snapshot and save that as a PNG. And remember, when we're doing this, we want to make sure that our size, let's say that that's going to be a 2048 by 2048. So that's good. Now that's a lot of resolution that what we'll do is downscale that later on. So we'll drop that to 1024 by 1024, but 2048 by 2048 is quite a bit of resolution for us to be able to work with. And so we'll output that as a UV. I haven't set up my project yet, but you can see I'm going to Crate and Barrel. This is going to be under our house, our building. So I'll save that out, and then we'll move on to the texturing phase, which will be our next video. So again, here is our model. And if I look at what my UVs are doing for me, turning that on, they're all contained within 0 to 1 for U and V. So that's exactly what I'm looking for. So this is what I'll use when I start in Photoshop for the next video.